super excited to be talking to you specifically about this because this is a first time for me. And, well, not a first time, but I've been fasting. I am currently 64 hours into a 72-hour fast, which means I get to eat tonight at 6:30 p.m. So you can do the math as to when we were recording this.
Nice.
So I've never done a 72-hour fast before. And part of why I'm doing it, actually, I knew it was going to coincide with this because I really wanted to talk to you about it. And I actually probably didn't want to talk to you about it first because I didn't want you to tell me not to do it. But I figured, what the heck? I thought it'd be a great podcast topic because I get to be the guy that's doing it currently and feeling all the feelings, and you get to be the expert that you are and explain to me why I'm feeling all the feelings. And I figured if we talked about it a little bit, maybe it could either, depending upon what you say, probably steer people towards it, away from it, at least and I can give a firsthand experience. So here I am. I'm currently fasted. I'm on 64 hours, no food, water only. I did have a little bit of black coffee. And I feel good.
Yeah.
I feel really good.
Yeah.
I would say I feel mentally sharp. Regular listeners of the podcast might even realize I'm talking a little bit faster, I feel like. I feel more energized. Well, I guess I want to start by asking the question to you. What am I doing? What am I doing from a nutrition standpoint? Kind of talk me through a little bit about what it means to do a 72-hour fast from a nutrition standpoint.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, fasting is not uncommon, for us as humans. Obviously, we've been forced to fast sometimes where we were food scarce, and then when we are food abundant, we still choose to fast, whether spiritually or otherwise. So it is a common thing. We fast every night, right? And then we have break fast, right? So it's actually necessary. It's a necessary part of our metabolism, and I think that's where it is kind of interesting because if you weren't aware, I don't know if you're even aware of this, MJ, but I did intermittent fasting longer than anyone I know. I did it for like 6-7 years.
What do you mean by intermittent?
Yep. So my intermittent fasting was basically I ate somewhere around 3 or 4 p.m. every day until about like 10 or 11 was when I kind of like stopped eating. And every day I would have some sort of like snack at 3 or 4 p.m. and then I'd go to jiu-jitsu and then I'd get home around like 8:30-ish, and then I would eat like my dinner and stuff. So while I had like a little bit bigger of a window there, that 3 to like 10 or 11, there was a big chunk of it where I just did movement as well. And the reason why I started doing that was one, because I learned some of the benefits of fasting. I learned that it is crucial in a way, and there will be a little asterisk here to all of our discussions because I do have a lot of people who listen who maybe struggle a little bit on the eating side, eating and mental health, and maybe more restriction. And what I'll say is that there is nuance here. So don't take it for granted that there is a bigger piece to the fasting puzzle than just like it's good or it's bad or it's this. It's very nuanced. So, but anyways, I did this for many, many years, and one of the biggest reasons is because I didn't have like a super intensive 9 to 5, right? Like I did my clinical kind of nutrition stuff, and it was very easy for me. I didn't really have to be on. I wasn't doing what I was doing now, where I'm like focused intently for hours at a time and engaged and connected, right? So it was just very easy for me to go through the day. And then at nighttime, I would eat my meals. I would eat pretty much as I would like, and I kind of enjoyed that because, I like to eat food, right? And I didn't really get much enjoyment or feel much of a need to eat much during the day, right? I just kind of like listened mostly to my body. There was a reason why I stopped, but I did it for 6 to 7 years every single day.
Even on the weekends?
Oh yeah, every single day. And as I got to like the 6-7 year mark, I did get a little bit more flexible with those windows, and I kind of I incorporated a little bit more intuition with that. But yeah, I was pretty much dead on for a long, long time. I had like maybe 1 or 2 like little breaks in there, just I don't know, maybe just like a life thing. I can't really remember. So I think there's some utility in that, and but you're doing like a 3-day, like boom, nothing kind of fast.
Yeah. Yep. So my reasons are number one, I guess the universe timed it up perfectly for me. A friend of mine that was deciding to do like a group of people, we're going to do the 72-hour fast. It was started. You could start on Sunday. So interestingly enough, we decided to have our nephews over on Saturday, and we made homemade pizza and homemade chocolate chip cookie ice creams. And then the next morning we made chocolate chip pancakes. And of course I ate all of them, and the nephews just didn't really care. They ate them all too. But so it was kind of sealed it for me. Like, okay, you know, I feel like I need to do something to bring my discipline back into play. And with the starting, I was like, you know what, this is the thing. I'm gonna just decide right now that I want to do this. And so at 6:30 on Sunday night, I decided that my goal was to take part in this 72-hour fast. I knew that I had accountability partners with the group, and Corey's doing it also. So I had the accountability partner in the house, which is really good. And I think because my intention was to be disciplined, it's been easier for me than if my intention was to do something that was like more covert or ancillary, like, you know, I'm going to do the 72-hour fast so I can lose weight, or, you know, feel the benefits of the fasting, or right. I didn't know what any of those were. I just decided that I wanted to use it as a tool to be disciplined. So the thought of failing or choosing to just break it was choosing not to be disciplined, which I just am again. This is a trait that I seem to have, is when I do set my mind to something, I genuinely give it my all. So I'm giving it my all. What I found is a couple things. One, we've talked about this word on the podcast before, and God, maybe if you could, we could look it up, because I'm going to butcher it, but I suffer from kobayashi. I think it's a Japanese word for your mouth is lonely.
Yeah.
I found that
lonely mouth.
I just really enjoy eating. I enjoy getting food. I enjoy going to the grocery store to pick it up. I enjoy making it. But I also found that I've developed this habit where no problem missing breakfast, no problem missing lunch, dinner. I really kind of focus my days around almost, where I'm like, you know, one of the conversations I have every morning is, what are we having for dinner? You know, so we can set that up. And that was the biggest piece that I missed. Day one, hangry a little bit, kind of going through probably the coming down from all the sugar and stuff that I had eaten the day before. You know, I don't know how this works exactly, but like kind of getting all through that part of the system. Day two, yesterday, really started to feel clearer, like mentally. And this is where I started to read about it and kind of try to understand what's going on in the body. And then today, day three, I'm on day three, and I got to say, I feel genuinely, I don't really feel hungry at all. Yesterday was some waves of hunger, but today I feel almost like what's going to cause me to break my fast once I get to my goal is just simply that I just want to eat. Like I don't feel like my body's like, you got it. Like, what are you doing? You got to do it. Now, does that mean that won't happen in 2 days, more days, or another day? I don't know. I've never done anything like this. So I want to talk, I want you, if you don't mind, to kind of talk a little bit about autophagy, right? When because that's the benefit that makes me feel good about what I'm doing, right? Like, and then I want to tell you why I think I feel clearer, and you can tell me if I'm right or wrong.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So any prolonged fast, something like greater than a day, say, it is kind of dangerous. So when you do break your fast, you have to do this very mindfully. You wouldn't want to have a big, huge meal. You can't have a big, huge meal because then you run the risk of other kinds of changes. The problem with that is that when people say, well, okay, cool, it's like 3+ day fast. Let's do that. That's like a trend. The problem with it is that some bodies are built different and some bodies aren't resilient, which is the sad truth about.
Really?
Yeah. You could be perfectly healthy, but yet your body is just wired in such a way that you decide to, eat this big meal and your body says, oh, well, screw you. And you have these like very potentially dangerous electrolyte shifts that can be fatal in some individuals. Will it happen? Probably not. But is it possible? Definitely. And it's not likely the case for someone who's relatively well nourished and then does like a 3-day fast or whatever, but it is possible. And so in which case you need to break any type of fast very, very slowly, a little bit of protein, test your system out a bit. Then you have a little bit like a snack and then get into it. So just for the record, make sure you do that.
So I thought about my meal. For the entire first day, I thought about what I was going to break my fast with. And what I've come up with is, and I did a little bit of reading, it's going to be, they have miso soup to start. And then this whole meal was like something you can just order. Miso soup and then a little bit of a pause. I'm going to try to pause for a little bit, maybe 10, 15 minutes. And then a salad, just a small salad with like lettuce and cucumber and ginger dressing because it's the same place, and then pause, and then I really like sashimi, so just some fish.
You go to that place?
Oh yeah. I'm going to Saga. I drive by it every day. I'm like, I think about it. I thought about it. So that's my intention, and I know Corey's intention is to do salmon and Brussels sprouts and goat cheese.
Yeah, good. Yeah. You definitely, and this is the thing. It's like it's. I would actually say this too, that fasting is not like a good strategy for weight loss. As much as it seems that way, you're actually most people are going to pay the price because you're going to be so hungry towards the end. You're going to swing wide and you're going to be like overeating for a couple days. So the body is very adaptable, keeping that in mind. But I actually don't mind it in terms of like almost like a spiritual practice is when you talk about like discipline and I want to challenge myself. Like that's a spiritual practice, whether people want to like classify it that way or not. Obviously, we're not talking like Ramadan. It's not a religious practice, but it is a spiritual one, and I think that's kind of cool. And that's one of the reasons why I actually enjoyed that, for myself, is because I set my mind to something that I feel like was good for me, and like worked out for my day, and then there's a little bit of challenge here and there with that kind of stuff, but ultimately, like I think it helped my relationship with food, and that's the big thing, is that you want these things to help.
Yeah. So I want to just say this to you real quick. I didn't expect this, and check back in 6 months, but this has shown me that my relationship with food really was different. I knew it. Right? We've talked about it on the podcast before. Like I never eat because I'm hungry, and so because I never eat because I'm hungry, I never stop when I'm full. I eat because I like to eat, which means I eat until it's gone, which means I almost decided before I started cooking how much food I'm going to make, which is double what probably should, and then I eat that. So what showed me was like, yeah, this really is a thing that it's changing my relationship with food as we speak, literally, in understanding around it.
And I think maybe this is maybe a more deeper conversation for another time, but I do think that fasting and the kind of implementation of some regimen, I think that can help certain people repair a relationship with food that is like that. So let's talk about it though. The metabolic changes, right? I said like fasting is a necessity because it is. Your body kind of has like, I like to think about it almost as like a switch, right? When the switch is up, you're in this like very anabolic mode, and that means your body is building up all sorts of things, right? Building up muscle, building up, certain tissues, building up proteins, building up enzymes, creation, right? And then on the flip side, when the switch is down, you're in this catabolic kind of mode, and you're breaking things down, right? You're recycling, you're burning, right?
So I don't understand the building up part then. So building up, what are you building up? You're building up like your body, like
all sorts of things. You're creating muscle tissue, creating enzymes,
Okay.
Building bone density. You're creating new proteins that you might need. You're creating non-essential vitamins. All right, your creation. There's creation. Energy is put towards that, and you would find that like in an excess, like an energy excess kind of position. What is important to understand is that it's not like a set switch. It's kind of like you're in anabolic mode right now, and then now you're in catabolic. You kind of swapping between the two of them as your body needs, and it's very good. You want periods of time building up, obviously. You want periods of times of breaking down. This doesn't necessarily pertain just to like burning fat, say, but it is. When you're in build up mode, you're not breaking down fat. When you're in breakdown mode, you are breaking down fat, but you're not building muscle, right? So you could think about it that way, but it's much more complex than just those basic kinds of. So when you are fasting, you're in breakdown mode, which is necessary. And one of the biggest benefits of fasting is, like you said, that like autophagy, which basically means that your cells themselves are kind of cleaning everything out, right? So we have this like cellular type of health, and the cellular health is not always indicative of our current physical superficial health. You could be perfectly well, but you could kind of have damage, and you definitely do have damaged cellular components. And one of the big things here in the topic of conversations around metabolism lately has been eccentric to that mitochondria in the cell. And it's not just one mitochondria. There are potentially hundreds of mitochondria in certain cells.
Really?
Yeah, I know how we learned in biology. Powerhouse
Not
of the
picture.
cell. Yeah, there's
There's
just
only
one. There are crazy stats like, I don't know, like the number of mitochondria in the body, like weigh X amount of, it's really nuts. I'm not even going to attempt to like, but we have a lot. Point being is we have more than you think, and mitochondria is one of the most important metabolic creations, and it is probably it is cool because they've determined that specific organelle, the like organ inside the cell, was made from like a fusing of bacteria and like regular cell. And so this bacteria kind of came in and like ended up being kind of like symbiotic, and then but a story again for another day. However, these mitochondria, vitally important. They regulate energy and so many other things. It's not just energy, but they basically regulate our entire metabolism. They get damaged. And the problem when they're damaged is that they don't work correctly, yet they are still kind of there, taking up space, taking up energy, and doing the job very poorly. And we need periods of times of this like hormetic stress. We've talked about that before, the stress upon the body, because when the body is stressed through fasting, not enough nutrients, or it's stressed through movement, or it's stressed through sauna or ice bath, or all these different kinds of things, then the body says, oh God, like I need to change something. I need to break down all these damaged, broken components, and I need to repair them, right? It's almost like this, there's a shock that happens to the body, and the body like gets its act together and says, let me clean up all these things. And so the main benefit of fasting, in quite frankly, periods of time where we're not eating, is that the body has time to do that. It has time to say, oh, well, I'm not in creation mode. I don't need to handle all these nutrients coming in. I can recycle what I need. And that's probably the main benefit when it comes to fasting, is the body says, oh, okay, well, let me recycle all these things. I break down all the broken mitochondria, and then guess what? I make new ones, new, healthy, beautiful, powerful mitochondria. And that, to be honest, is really important for most people. You need healthy, functioning mitochondria because that's how you become very well and functioning and everything. I've always disliked the idea of eating consistently. There is almost nothing, and let me define consistency real quick. Eating consistently would mean, that like the trope of like eat every 2 to 3 hours, versus rhythm, which would be eating at 12 every day, eating around 6 every day, right? Eating in this kind of like circadian kind of rhythm fashion. But I very much dislike consistency. I think that that's not supported at all. I think it's just terrible advice. I think it's unintuitive, meaning you're not listening to the body. And so the problem with that is if you're eating every 2 to 3 hours, your body never gets a chance to break down. I mean, aside from like nighttime, which might only be, 8 hours for certain people, your body never gets the chance to do that. And that's why that sleep is so important. And when people don't have good sleep schedules, they eat till the time they go to bed and they sleep for 5 hours and they wake up and they're eating again. I mean, when is your body repairing and recycling and doing all of those kinds of really important tasks? So that to me is the biggest impact of fasting.
Okay, that makes good sense. So autophagy really is something that we need, whether it's going through this period of time where we pause for over 24 hours or just a period of time where we're mindful of it and wait to eat. And so now I just want to kind of explain why I think this.
Okay.
Well, first of all, I think to your point, like I believe that there's just so many like food norms that aren't real, right? That were created in order to get you to do something, right? The breakfast is the most important meal of the day. The food pyramid that we know to be kind of upside down, created by someone that wanted you to eat more cereal, essentially. But what I do think, and this is again, this is my first time at this, so I'm a first timer here. I think there might be something to our evolution from hunter gatherers, because when people say when I've having this conversation a lot the last couple of days, right? Because I'm like I used my conversations throughout this fast with people that I generally interact with as accountability partners. They didn't realize it, but I was like, hey, I'm doing this fast, and I was always greeted with, I could never do that. I'd be so sluggish. I'd be so tired. I'd be this. And I assumed the same. But what I'm finding is this like extra energy, this more mental clarity. And I'm from what I'm reading, this third day, I'm starting to get into an area where my body will start to produce growth hormone in order to protect my muscles. And when I put those pieces of information together, included with the way that I feel, I almost feel like because we were hunter-gatherers, when food was scarce, our body would pick us up when we're down. Like, we're not just going to lay down on the ground and not go hunt. Like, we need to continue the hunt. We need to be better at hunting. We need to be faster, better, more energy, more acutely aware of our surroundings in order to successfully survive and, survival of the fittest and all that type of stuff. So I think that's part of it for me. Does that make sense?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, we have, our systems are so awesome. The more I learn about the body, the more I'm so fascinated by it, because we do have these like very even beneficial kind of protective systems, right? It's beneficial to feel stress on the body, because then the body like responds in this like adaptive way that's like helpful for us. It's almost like it's supposed to be there. We're supposed to run into those kinds of stressors, and it is true. A lot of people will feel this mental clarity that comes with fasting. But let's talk about that. It's kind of nuanced too, because what ends up happening for a lot of people, especially if they're like eating consistently, right, like every 2-3 hours or whatever, digestion is very active. And the biggest problem with digestion always being active is that it's always sapping energy from us. It's one of the main reasons why I always share with people, if you do like a 9 to 5, lunch is kind of an odd meal. You know, it's kind of, to your point, it's a cultural kind of norm in some way. And it's not necessarily bad or good. And cultural norms with food are not malicious either. Food is a cultural experience. Food is the most important thing for humans, right? And so like when we use it in many different ways, whether it, you know, it's not just fuel, which is like, oh, it's like the most gross saying I hear sometimes, obviously from like the gym bro kind of people. Like, I just eat because food is fuel. It's like, it's not like, I mean, I get it. I get what you're doing, but it's not just that. It's more complicated.
I think even those people wouldn't realize, would acknowledge it.
Yeah.
You know, like,
I would hope so. Well, they would also, but they might like, yeah, they might judge that in some way. Like, well, yeah, it's because everyone else is not as disciplined as me. You know, that kind of approach is like, it's just wrong. But nonetheless, you, the 9 to 5 and eating lunch in the middle of the day, especially when it's like meal-like, it's got like many components and all that kind of stuff, it kind of does bog you down. And, you know, one thing that I hear a lot is I often encourage people to eat rhythmically, right? I encourage like, you know, something in the morning, something kind of, you know, midday and nighttime, and like maybe some snacks in between if that's like what the person needs. I often encourage that. But again, it's for a reason. So sometimes when people say, well, oh, you know, I ate a lunch today, Ryan, but I felt really sluggish. Like I felt worse. And that is true. And what happened there is that their lunch was too big.
Yeah, and they talk about the afternoon slump that they need a coffee for.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's either they didn't get quite enough or they've been going too long and they have that like little slumpy kind of feeling. But more often than not, it's just they ate something too big. It turned on digestion too much. It was too digestively intense, and that sapped so much energy. And now, guess what? You know, they're in a parasympathetic mode. You know, when to digest food, you activate those vagal nerves, which you know all about this, similar to breathing. It brings you down. It has you feeling rested. And this is the exact opposite of what you want for us, right? We want to be in that kind of, you know, more activated. We have some adrenaline going on. We want that clarity from adrenaline. We want that kind of drive that comes from adrenaline. We want that kind of like at least a little bit of sympathetic activation during the day. And guess what fasting does? Just that, right? And that's why you feel very active. It's why you feel very clear. And this is why it's a common thing. It's because your body says, ooh, we're not getting in nutrients. That's kind of bad. It doesn't like it, but it likes it, you know, like it does well with it. It does it. And so it says, oh, this is a problem. Let's increase our focus. Let's search for food. Let's kind of like keep things, you know, like highlighted. For someone who is kind of like a restrictive eater, they're not getting enough in, this is awful because they're already feeling activated. And then they say, well, let me just eat less and fast and do this. It's terrible because you're already activated, your anxiety's already high, your depression's already there, whatever, and you're just making it worse. But for a lot of people, you know, who are just kind of relatively normal eaters, you kind of probably want a little bit of that mental stimulation to bring you through the day. And so, again, there's a little bit of nuance with that as well, because I sent you a couple of things the other day about how our blood glucose stores, or not stores, but our blood glucose availability essentially does impact decision making, does impact mental capacity, does impact emotional regulation and all of that. And so you're feeling clear right now, but I would argue that if you were to try and do something new, build a new habit, you would be pretty much incapable of doing that in this state. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
So I can go about my day feeling clear and normal, but it's what I'm used to. But my ability to learn something new might be hindered right now.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I have 8 hours left, 10 hours left. Maybe we do a follow-up. I'm curious. Yeah, I'm interested to see if I could go try and do something Jiu-jitsu doesn't count because I struggle to learn that anyways. Sometimes I feel like a small child trying to learn the easiest tasks. But so break it down for me one last time. What would you say? I know it's nuanced.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to someone that's like, you know what? Mike seems pretty happy right now. I think I'll give it a shot.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to them?
Yeah. I mean, again, I'm kind of like, I'll tell you the reasons. The reasons I did it was because yes, it can help your metabolic decay that has occurred over just over time, right? And so you need this kind of like autophagy, you need this kind of hormetic stress to clear out the cells and build anew, right? Like you really do need that. And so that can help people, right? Even if it's like you're extending the windows of your nighttime fast a little bit longer, like that can be helpful too, right? Which is why people kind of do enjoy the intermittent fasting kind of things.
Oh, hold on. I have another question. Sorry.
Yeah.
Definitely one of the things that I have not done, but I've always been told is like, don't eat right before bed. Is that because it extends the fasting window, or is that because, what's the reason for that?
That's more of like a myth. I think in the context
Perfect.
that I just said it, it's kind of like, it could be useful to have a longer window there metabolically, but it doesn't necessarily mean that there's actually no research on that at all. I did the research. I looked up where that comes from. It doesn't really come from anywhere in particular. It just is kind of like one of those like tropes that's been repeated, and because it's been repeated so much, people believe it. The only thing is that you probably from the majority of people, you probably don't want to go to bed consistently with like a very full stomach. Because digestive problems can occur just from laying down and everything. Also, digestion, like active digestion, does require energy. So it requires your heart to pump blood, obviously. And the heart is the time, the heart needs rest, and that's where it happens when we sleep. We have the lowest heart rate during sleep, obviously, and that's its rest. So the heart never stops, but it does slow down, and you need that to be slow at times. And so, if it's consistently pumping, needing to fuel fuel the kind of digestion, then, is it bad? Probably.
Resting as much as you could be resting.
Yeah, I mean, there isn't like research on that, but that's the only thing I actually did because I was interested. Again, because I intermittent fasted all day long, and then I would eat big meals at night. This is also why I stopped, because I worked out at night, so I needed my nutrients at night, or I did jujitsu at night. And I would take my heart rate with those, like a little heart rate monitor through the night, and I'd recognize the nights that I ate a bigger meal or closer to bed or whatever, my heart rate wasn't as low. And to me, it just seems problematic. Again, I have no data, but my own data and my own knowledge suggests that you probably need that. You probably need that consistently to be lower so that, you can get that kind of repair. So that's one thing. The other reason why I stopped was because the exact reason that I mentioned is that you won't have very great focus. You won't have great emotional regulation. You won't have great capacity to give, despite the fact that you're alert and active. You're not actually fully there. And so that's a kind of a weird thing to think about, because I know that you feel good right now, but you're not fully there. Our neurons turn on in the presence of glucose. And so when you eat something that's, has a little bit of carbohydrate and you absorb that glucose, your neurons are attuned. They fire better and bigger. And this is why like carbohydrates are such a great like windfall nutrients. Why carbohydrates aren't essential, meaning the body doesn't actually need them, but it likes them, and we do better with them. And in fact, there's some studies, this is kind of like, maybe ruin your thoughts on fasting a little bit, sorry. There's been studies that suggest that all the things that are positive from fasting, the autophagy, and then the kind of like recycling and the building anew and the whatever, the growth hormone kind of stuff, right? Like the hormonal kind of changes, which, are still kind of like unsure. All of that can be replicated by carbohydrate fasting specifically, or basically like having limited access to carbohydrates for a period of time.
Really?
Yeah.
So I could have been eating like steak and
like protein and fat. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. Which I think is interesting.
That is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Even autophagy?
What do you mean?
Even autophagy?
Yep. Yeah.
Wow.
Because the body's major signal for anabolic behavior is insulin. And so insulin is like such a buzzword kind of hormone. Everyone knows what that is, but it really is the big boy, right? That's the king of
your pancreas is involved in that.
Yep. Okay. And it is the hormone that controls metabolic health essentially. And so this is why when you see when the conversation is kind of centric around like insulin sensitivity and insulin resistance, those are kind of important things. They know that insulin resistance causes pretty much every chronic health condition that we can find between cardiac disease and diabetes and just like vascular types of diseases. It pretty much causes all the problems. And so you really need to balance that out well. And so for me, when I said like, well, I kind of liked some of the benefits of fasting, I actually get a lot more well-rounded balance of everything through a decent breakfast that has some carbohydrates, some fat, some protein to kind of like get me through the majority of the day. That's like my fuel. So I can talk and I can listen and I can focus and I can be emotionally regulated. And then in the middle of the day, I have my like protein and fat. Sometimes I'll have some carbohydrate if I'm feeling like I really just need a little bit more, which is a feeling, and I'm intuitive with that. But most of the time, it's like protein, fat, and then I go and do my workouts. Sometimes I'll have a little carbohydrate beforehand, and then I come home and have dinner is like a nice, well balanced kind of dinner because carbohydrates also help with sleep, and so hence that. So yeah, I think the balanced approach kind of helps cover the basis for fasting. Although the other thing too is to consider that fasting is kind of a good substitute for exercise. Not to say it's like, actually, it's not really like super fair to say, but say someone weren't super active and they like fasted, you're getting still the almost the exact same hormetic response. And that's where I think some of the utility is too. So there's that.
So it sounds like the very first thing you said is what people should take away from this is that it's very nuanced.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, for me personally, I'm glad that I did it from a discipline, and I do think a little bit of a spiritual perspective,
Sure.
And I'm glad that I engaged in the activity in order to just learn a little bit about myself. And I'm looking forward to see what it does with my relationship with food. 43 years of eating the same way. I don't expect it to change dramatically after just stopping for 72, but I do now. But I now can say, hey, I've done it. I've tried it. It worked, or I was successful with it. So I think that wraps up our fasting episode. I appreciate you dropping the knowledge on us.
Sure.
For all of it. And I think we'll do a small one later on, and we'll talk about after I break the fast, see what happens for the next couple of days and how I feel and what that looks like.
Yeah. It'd be interesting. It'd be interesting to see like how you summarize that. But yeah, you're right. I think it's interesting. It's interesting to know the stuff behind it. Interesting to know why it might be helpful versus where the cons could potentially be. But kind of cool stuff. Thanks for being the test subject.
My pleasure.
All right. And yeah, please drop us a like, follow, whatever the kind of interactions are there. Share it, all those things, and then we'll catch you next time.